Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and this is another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by your favorite beat reporter, Chris Fedor. What up, Chris?
What's going on, Ethan?
Well, Chris, the Cavs are nearing the end of this road trip, but I want to get your thoughts on the Miami Heat game that saw Cleveland claw its way back from a 16-point deficit in the second quarter and secure their third win in the last decade on the road against the Heat. What did you think about coming back from a 16-point deficit for a team that has been the one that's been on the other side of those deficits and having a lead and giving them up and finally getting back on their win column?
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs this year, when they've been faced with double-digit deficits, Ethan, whether it's throughout the course of the game, whether it's going into the fourth quarter, they haven't really shown a consistent ability to rally from behind. So it felt like to me when they went down 39-23 on the road in Miami, a place where they just do not win. I was like, well, just another one of those nights in Miami. Chalk it up. Another loss for the Cavs in South Beach. But they showed a lot of toughness. They showed a lot of perseverance. They showed a lot of resiliency. And I give a lot of credit to the Cavs bench. You know, sometimes when it comes to these games for the Cavs, it's just like Donovan's going to save them, or Darius is going to save them, or a hot shooting night from Max Strus where he bangs in 6, 7 threes that can save them. It was a total team effort. It was Dean Wade's defense, right? It was Tristan Thompson's toughness and grit and the things that he brought to the defensive end of the floor early in that game when the Cavs were kind of floundering on the defensive end. It was Craig Porter Jr. coming in and making plays on the offensive end of the floor and getting his teammates involved and getting into the paint and getting the Miami Heat into foul trouble. It was Donovan Mitchell making plays, making shots, because that's what he does. Like in different pockets of the game, it was different guys. And I thought that was something that stood out to me. It showed the depth of this team. It showed the toughness of this team that has been questioned by people outside of Cleveland multiple times since that series against New York. And it showed that they can be a balanced scoring attack when they play the right way on the offensive end of the floor and they get guys involved, not with the dribble, but more so with the pass. Sam Merrill, too. I can't leave him out. He had 3 big threes.
Yeah, three threes. He had two to end the second quarter to actually give the Cavs, I think it was their second lead of the game, 51-50. And the Cavs bench scored 26 of the team's 53 first half points. And they came in after the first period where the Cavs literally had their worst first quarter total production of the season. And that was all in the first half. To think about the fact that they had that much impact in one half, and then in the second half, the bench only scored 18 points, and 13 of those came from Georges Niang, and we'll get to his new nickname in a second. And he had 10 in the fourth quarter and was yapping with people on the bench and with people on the sideline. It was just an entertaining night to see in Miami, and you got to be there, and then you also got to sit down with Kevin Love and talk about the possibility of him coming back to Cleveland to retire. So between the 16-point comeback in the second quarter to Georges Niang getting his new nickname as the G-Wagon, upgrading from the minivan, and talking to Kevin Love for the first time since he was traded, what stood out to you most from this Miami trip?
Just a level of connectivity that the Cavs are showing at both ends of the floor. And it doesn't always have to be shown in terms of how much they're celebrating with each other. But I mean, like, when things are going right offensively, are they making the right plays for one another? When things are going right defensively, are they on a string? Are they communicating? Are there defensive breakdowns and things like that? Like, there are times where some of their guards are going to get beat off the dribble, right? There are times where the other guy on the other side is just going to score a bucket somehow, some way. But the Cavs are making all of these teams work when they're on the defensive end of the floor. The Cavs are putting a lot of pressure on the opponent when they're on the offensive end of the floor. It just doesn't feel during this stretch that offense is as much of a chore for the Cavs. and there are as many sloppy defensive communication breakdowns and things like that. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of their level of connectivity in how they're playing with each other. And I think it makes sense, right? Because now the starting lineup has been together more. Now the top 8 in this rotation has been together more, even though the Cavs in this stretch have been playing at times without Evan Mobley, at times without Karis LeVert and stuff like that. They're just learning each other. They're learning different sets. They're learning where they're supposed to be on the court. It just looks like a team that is starting to figure things out and get that consistency in terms of attention to detail, in terms of effort, in terms of energy, all of those things that they were striving for at the beginning of the season. Those things, Ethan, look like they're starting to come together. And it's a really, really good thing to see. And it's a really fun thing to see when a team starts to turn the corner and figure those kinds of things out.
For me, it was really like this is a Cavs team that came off a series and said we need to go get a shooter because we were not good from behind the arc against the Knicks in the playoff series, to going against Miami and making 7 threes as a team in the third quarter to take a 21-7 advantage in just under 6 minutes. Like, I was watching the game and seeing as though the shots just looked like they kept falling because the Cavs, most of their offense comes from within the paint. It comes from within the 3 point line. And to see the Cavs improve on such a high level, because like we talked about, Sam Merrill had 3 threes, and I think 2 of them came in the second quarter. So him and Max Strus are the supposed shooters on that team, and everybody else had to be doing their thing too. Dean Wade had a huge one in the second quarter. Like, it was just, obviously we all know 3 points is worth more than two. But coming into a game where they were gonna be going up against the team without Bam Adebayo, you would have thought that they would be banging the interior, but it was the opposite. They were hitting from all cylinders on the 3 point line. So that was a good standout for me.
And be honest, when Sam Merrill went into that game as one of the first guys off the bench, you and all the Cavs fans were like, what the hell is JB Bickerstaff thinking? How is he going to Sam Merrill instead of Craig Porter Jr. when Darius Garland gets in foul trouble, right? You were thinking that, weren't you?
I was thinking that they needed something, and I know that they needed scoring bad, and that Sam knows he has the green light whenever he hits the ball. Was I thinking that Craig would be a better option? Maybe, but but I don't think it was like resounding. I think it was like at that point there's so much more game left to be played. So you don't want Craig going in and catching an early foul either. Like, you want to like spread it out and see what people are looking at. Like, Sam is a shooter. We all know that. I think that was the game plan from JB Bickerstaff, to like try and get shots up, see if he gets hot, because it takes a lot more effort for Craig to get his buckets than it does for Sam, just because Craig takes about 10 seconds off the shot clock to get into the interior. He doesn't really shoot from outside.
I mean, they're stylistically different players. I think when your offense is struggling and you feel like there's not a lot of fluidity to it, there's not a lot of rhythm to it, the team is working really, really hard on that end of the floor to create quality looks. There are different ways that you can release that pressure and open up the floor. You can put another ball handler in there and say, okay, go out there, create offense for others, create offense for yourself off the bounce, try and get into the paint, driving kicks, things along those lines. Or you can release that pressure by opening things up, creating more movement, creating a little bit more chaos for the opposing defense so that they don't know exactly where the ball is going. They don't know what you're running. They could have some more communication breakdowns and things along those lines. And it seemed like to me when JB looked at the situation, he said, okay, I've got enough ball handling. I've got enough creation. I've got to open the floor up in a different kind of way because of how Miami was packed in the paint and trying to take away driving lanes and making things difficult on Donovan Mitchell and some of these other guys. And that is an option at the very least, that JB will continue to have off the bench with Sam Merrill. A different kind of need sometimes will require a different kind of player. And for Sam to step up, knock down those threes, give that spacing, give that shooting, show JB that moving forward, if that situation presents itself again, call on me and I'll deliver the same kind of way. And I want to say this too, Ethan, because I've gotten a lot of questions from a lot of people about the Cavs bench, its inconsistency. A lot of people, and I do this too, they look at the box score and they say, okay, how many points did the Cavs get off the bench compared to the other team's bench? I think it's important to point out that everybody on this team, just like every other team in the NBA, there are specific roles for specific players. And Sam Merrill and some of these other guys, they haven't earned the same kind of role as, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. And I think fans have to understand that it's not everybody's role on this team to go out and score 10 points a night.
You see it with the Dean Wade hate.
Thank you.
Like people know, Chris is on the road. I'm back in Cleveland holding down the fort over here. And I'm probably stalking Chris's Twitter page more than anybody else, trying to see what people are saying, trying to see what information I can get. And everybody coming in Chris's neck talking about Dean Wade is scoring 0 points but doing whatever. This was before the game. And then Dean Wade goes out and hits a clutch three in the second quarter that highlighted everything, lit up everything, all while playing defense and locking up Jimmy Butler and
Jason Duncan Robinson around a million screens.
yeah. So there's more to the game of basketball than the ESPN box score. We all look at it. We can all put the advanced stats on and pull over and see what the plus minus looks like and all that good stuff. But that does not always indicate what the player is doing in those games, especially with Dean Wade, who just came back from an injury, having to step up and start because Evan Mobley was out. You also have to equate that into the conversation as well. Like the Dean Wade hate need to chill out just a little bit. And since he's been back, the Cavs have been winning.
And think about this, Ethan. If Donovan Mitchell is going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 25 shots a game, it's going to vary, obviously, but it's going to be right around that range. And Darius Garland is going to be in that same kind of range. And Evan Mobley is going to be somewhere between like 14 to 18. And then Jared Allen's going to have some level of involvement on the offensive end. And when healthy, Karis LeVert is going to be between like 10 and 14 shots. Like, how many do you think are available for Dean Wade? How many do you think are available for Craig Porter Jr.? How many do you think are available for Isaac Okoro? And then don't forget Max Strus coming off of screens, and he's probably going to get, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 18 based on the night, based on the matchup, based on the opponent. So it's like there are only so many shots available throughout the course of a game. There are so many touches available. There's only so much usage available for these certain guys. And it's like, do you have other players on this roster that can find a way to impact the game in a positive way while not getting those shots, while not getting those points, while not getting those touches? And every team needs guys like that. Low maintenance, low touch, don't have to call plays for them. And they just find a way to make other meaningful plays throughout the course of the game. That's Dean Wade's role, right? That's Isaac Okoro's role. And everybody has their own specific role on this roster. That's how you create a team. Again, it's not going to be the same for every player. And it's not about production, it's about impact, because production comes with opportunity. And if you have a whole bunch of opportunity and you're a good enough player, you're going to find a way to be productive in the box score with those gaudy stats. But I'm always somebody, Ethan, who looks at impact. How do you positively impact the game?
Last question before we go into the break. What do you think about this new Georges Niang nickname, the G-Wag?
Very logical. Minivan made a lot of sense too. He explained it. He was like, he's somebody who needs a few trips around the block to really get warmed up and get into the flow of a game and stuff like that. So based on, his body composition and his playing style, that one made a whole lot of sense. And I can understand why it caught on and they made t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. But in saying that, like, It's a new place, it's a new start, it's a new role, new expectations. So it makes sense to give him a new nickname. And everybody inside this organization, Ethan, has been calling him G. They don't call him George, they call him G. So sticking with the vehicle theme, attaching the wagon to it, because, kind of more like a wagon than a sports car, right? So the G was his nickname already. Stick with the vehicle theme, upgrade from minivan, G Wagon, more luxurious to match his impact, more luxurious to match his role. I like it. I think it's a really, really good nickname. And I think he earned it based on his play. It wasn't just given to him.
I need him to either buy a G wagon or get a Gucci belt and just like flaunt it in the next at the next media availability. Anyway, all right, we're gonna take a quick break, but don't go too far because when we come back, we're gonna talk about where this Cavs team could be after this tough 5 game stretch. But before then, become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and myself by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from myself and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through subtext. We'll be right back. We're back. So, Chris, before this tough 5 game stretch with 2 games against the Magic, 2 games against the Celtics, and 1 game against the Heat began, I said that I wanted to see the Cavs go 3-2. And you said that was a tall task, predicting that they'd go 2-3. At the time of this recording, ahead of Cleveland's second matchup against Orlando on Monday. The Cavs are already at 2 wins with 3 games to go and are currently sixth in the Eastern Conference. Do you think the Cavs have a better chance of meeting your prediction of 2-3 or getting another win?
Well, I think even if they're going to get a win, it's against Orlando because going to Boston, the first game against Boston is the second night of a back to back. Who knows if Evan Mobley, Karis LeVert are going to play in that one. And Boston hasn't lost at home this year. I think they've won 22 in a row in Boston going back to last year in terms of the regular season. Like they're just a different team at home. They're averaging around 120 points per game at home. So this defense is going to be tested. This team is going to be tested. And trying to predict that the Cavs are going to go into Boston and hand them their first loss at home is hard to say. So, based on the matchup, based on the level of competition, if the Cavs are going to get to 3 wins, it's, to me, got to be against Orlando on Monday night. And they played very, very well at home against Orlando. It was probably their most complete performance of the season, wire to wire, not really having slip ups. Like, yeah, there were times that Orlando started to make a run and they cut into the lead, and there were a few murmurs inside the arena, but the Cavs played really, really well that night against Orlando. Orlando's going to be at home. Orlando's going to have the crowd on its side. Orlando's going to want a little bit of revenge. So it's not going to be easier. They're 10-2 at home as opposed to 5-5 on the road. Orlando is. So they just play a different kind of style at home. They're probably going to get Jonathan Isaac back into the lineup. That could help their defense as well. That could help their size, their length, their rebounding. All of that is to say, despite the fact that the Cavs have played well at the start of this Eastern Conference gauntlet, they're going to have their hands full to finish it off. And even if they don't pick up a win against Orlando or at least one win against Boston, to me, to go 2-3 in this stretch would still be successful. Now, because they've already banked 2 wins, obviously you get a little bit greedy and you want a little bit more. But it's already, to me, been a successful run through this Eastern Conference gauntlet.
I want to give a quick stat because you mentioned the 120 home scoring for the Celtics. The Cavs are 13-3 this season when holding a team under 120 points. Cleveland is 0-6 when teams score at least 120 points. They are seventh in opponents' points per game at 110.6. Okay, next question. With Evan Mobley potentially out for at least the first game in Boston, he's listed as out with a knee injury on Monday against Orlando. What will the keys to the games against the Celtics be if they look to try and give Boston its first home loss of the season?
Look, the Cavs allow 6.2 fewer points per 100 possessions with Evan Mobley on the floor. With him on the floor, their defense is as good as it gets in the NBA. With him off the floor, it's kind of like middle of the pack Atlanta Hawks type quality. That's a significant differential for any player. And you feel that when it comes to the Cavs. Miami has its own offensive challenges. So if you're going to miss Evan Mobley, missing him on a night that you're playing against Miami with their own offensive struggles and they don't have Bam Adebayo. So the Cavs were able to get away with it against a team like Miami. Boston, Orlando are completely different things. So I think the Cavs are going to feel Evan's loss a little bit more in these next couple because think about Orlando. Banchero scored 42 against the Cavs, and that was with Mobley in the lineup. However, Banchero and Franz Wagner in that game shot just 3 for 13 when Mobley was the closest defender. So a lot of that damage from Paulo and Franz when he actually did positive things on a night that he struggled in a big, big way, like that came against other defenders. And now if you think about their style and then translate that to Boston, they have the similar type of players that can take advantage of lesser defenders on the Cavs. Jason Tatum, who's going to guard him? Is it going to be Dean Wade? What happens with Kristaps Porzingis? Who checks Jaylen Brown? Are they going to go with Al Horford and Porzingis together at times? It puts a different level of stress on the Cavs defense without Evan than Miami was able to because it's a different matchup. It's a different style, different personnel groupings. So I think not having Evan against Orlando is probably going to show up on Monday night. And I think not having Evan against Boston would be detrimental to their chances of trying to limit such a good offense, especially when they're playing at home. I just don't know that the Cavs have the kind of personnel to match without their unicorn defender.
Yeah, and it looks like the Boston Celtics are going to have Kristaps back for that series too.
I mean,
So,
he was back the other night and he looked like he didn't miss a single game.
yeah.
He was dominant inside, he was shooting the ball from the outside. It's just a different dimension that Porzingis has given to the Celtics. And theoretically, it's the kind of guy that Evan Mobley would be able to limit, to mimic at both ends of the floor. So I just don't know how the Cavs are going to navigate that one if he's not in the lineup.
Are the Celtics a team that you think that the Cavs could mimic, like with how they have their style of rotations going forward? Because when I look at, you have the premier point guard in Drew Holiday, you have the two scorers in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and then you have Kristaps in the middle. When I look at it, it feels like Darius, Donovan, and Evan.
Well, the big difference is that the Celtics have the thing that is most important in the NBA and most important in a 7 game series: all star caliber 2-way wings. Those are the guys that make the biggest difference. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Max Strus has been very good for the Cavs. Max Strus has brought an element to this team that was desperately needed when it comes to movement, shooting, spacing, but it's a different level when you're talking about those caliber wings and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And that's the thing that the Cavs have been missing for years. And that's the thing that it looks like is still the most glaring hole on this roster when you talk about the separator between the Cavs and the other top teams in the NBA.
All right. Before we wrap, is there any prediction you want to give for this next couple of games?
I'm not in the prediction business. Are you kidding me? You can be in the prediction business. I don't want to be involved in the prediction business. There's a reason why I write about the team and don't bet on the team.
Sorry to all the bettors out there. Chris is not in the giving mood. It's getting closer to the giving season. He'll save it for around Christmas time.
Let's put it this way. I don't have the best feeling when it comes to the Cavs finishing this road trip in Boston. They've been playing well. They deserve a lot of credit for turning this thing around, and over the last 12 games, they've been one of the best defenses in the NBA over the last 12 games. They are third in the NBA in defense, which points to why they've been able to turn this thing around. But keeping up with the Boston Celtics, that's a tall task for a team that has been relatively inconsistent on the offensive end, even during this stretch, Ethan, where they've played better and they're 9-3 in their last 12. They still don't have a top 20 offense during that stretch. So it just puts a lot of pressure on the Cavs on the defensive end of the floor to try and hang with a team capable like Boston.
I'm gonna give my prediction since you don't want
Okay,
to.
cool. Let's go.
Celtics win the first game, and then the Cavs on the day off, on their day that they're gonna get to practice while still being in Boston.
No, they're not going to practice that day. No chance they practice that day.
Well, okay, then they take the day off and reevaluate the loss from the previous game, and then come back the next game with a new game plan or an altered game plan and win game two. Possibly they get the win against Orlando on Monday night and are already at 3 wins, and then could possibly even be better than both of our predictions and have 4 wins by the end of the road trip. But we'll see.
That is quite a rosy outlook for you.
That'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with myself and Chris by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from myself and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.